Now, let's understand the structural similarities, the functional similarities between mitochondria and chloroplast, and the differences between mitochondria and chloroplast. Okay, so let's talk about the structural similarities. Now, what do I mean by structural and functional? When you were doing this cell theory, and I said that cell is the basic structural as well as the functional unit of the cell, I told you that structural and functional are two different entities. When we're talking about structure, we're talking about the framework or the appearance of something. And when we're talking about the functional aspect of something, we're talking about the processes, the reactions that are taking place. So let's first talk about the structural similarities, the similarities in the appearances of mitochondria. So when we look at this organelle, we see that both mitochondria and chloroplast possess 70S ribosomes. Both chloroplast and mitochondria have a circular DNA and they're almost same in size. इनकी जो size की range होती है that is 2 to 10 micrometer in size. So they range somewhere between 2 to 10 micrometer. So they're almost same in size as well. We also saw that both these species, be it a mitochondria or chloroplast, have stalked particles on them. अच्छा जी हमारे पास इट्स वेरी हम लोग जो स्ट्रक्चरल डिफरेंसेस करेंगे सो वी विल टॉक अबाउट कि ये स्टॉक पार्टिकल्स किधर प्रेजेंट है बट हमारे पास जो स्टॉक पार्टिकल्स हैं जस्ट reiterate in this point as well that in a mitochondria the stalked particles are present on the cristae, the folds of the inner membrane, and they're always pointing towards the matrix of the mitochondria. And in chloroplast, these stalked particles are present on the thylakoid membrane and they're always pointing towards the stroma. तो जो भी हमारा medium है ना हमारे पास chloroplast में the medium is stroma. So the ATP synthase heads are pointing towards the stroma, and in mitochondria the medium is matrix. So the head of the ATP synthase, the head of the stalk particle is always pointing towards the matrix. So if you this sometimes labeling में आ जाता है that a stalk particle is drawn and you have to identify that which side the tail is pointing and which side the head is pointing. ठीक है जी? Then the last similarity in their structure is that both possess double membrane, and if both possess double membrane, one has to be an outer membrane, one has to be an inner membrane, and the region between the two membranes is called the intermembrane space. Okay? So these were the structural similarities between mitochondria and chloroplast. Now, when we move towards structural differences between mitochondria, so what are the differences that we can observe in their appearance? उनके फ्रेमवर्क में उनके अपीयरेंस में क्या क्या हमारे पास स्ट्रक्चरल डिफरेंसेस हैं let's discuss. So now when we were talking about mitochondria, yesterday we said that mitochondria has two compartments. And what are those compartments? One of the compartment is the intermembrane space and the other compartment is obviously the matrix. ठीक है जी? Now when we come to the chloroplast, there are three compartments present in the chloroplast. And what are those? The intermembrane space, ठीक है, and then the region. Obviously हमारे पास जो thylakoid है, इस thylakoid के अंदर अपनी एक पूरी दुनिया है. And when you'll come into A2, you'll study about the structure of thylakoid and what is present inside a thylakoid and what's happening inside a thylakoid. आप ये सब कुछ अपनी A2 में पढ़ोगे. So thylakoid space ये membrane से enclosed होती है. Thylakoid membrane इसको enclose कर रहा होता है, and then there is a medium, there is an environment, there is an entire world inside a thylakoid. So one region, one compartment that is in the chloroplast is basically thylakoid space, and then this entire region, which we call the stroma. So this entire region is our stroma, and then the third region that we have is our intermembrane space. So in totality, we have three compartments, we have three regions inside a chloroplast. One is the intermembrane space at the start, then we have a stroma, and then third, we have the thylakoid space. So I have mentioned over here that there are two compartments in mitochondria, intermembrane space and matrix. And in a chloroplast, we have three compartments, intermembrane space, stroma, and thylakoid. Now, in माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया हमारी जो इनर मेम्ब्रेन होती है, ठीक है जी, वो फोल्डेड होती है. लेट मी जस्ट राइट ये वाला पॉइंट आई डिड नॉट राइट, सो आई विल जस्ट राइट इट विद यू गाइस दैट The inner membrane of mitochondria, the inner membrane is folded and the folds are called cristae. And the inner membrane of chloroplast is not folded. So basically, one of the structural differences between mitochondria and chloroplast is that the inner membrane of mitochondria is folded, something like this. It has its ridges, and the inner membrane of chloroplast is not folded. Now, when I was talking about the stalked particles between mitochondria and chloroplast, I mentioned over there that the stalked particles are present on cristae in the mitochondria, the folds of the inner membrane, and in chloroplast, the stalked particles are present where? They're present on the surface of the thylakoid membrane. Now, obviously, हमारे पास reactions हो रहे होते हैं, enzyme reactions हो रहे होते हैं, and we said that the head of the stalked particle is an enzyme. It is the enzyme known as the ATP synthase. So, obviously, हमारे पास we need space, we need a region where those reactions can take place. So, because stalked particle is present on the cristae of mitochondria, that region, the cristae, are basically providing the surface area for the enzyme reactions in mitochondria. And in chloroplast, because the stalked particles are present on the thylakoid membrane is providing that surface area for the enzyme reactions to take place. Acha, although the third difference is not very visible when we're talking about our cartoon diagrams, because हमें cartoon diagram में the structure almost same लगता है. Like if you see almost same spherical सा structure है mitochondria का और chloroplast का. But if you could observe, हमारे पास जो chloroplast है वो oval spherical in shape है, ठीक है. और अगर आप मेरा mitochondria, चाहे आप cartoon image देखो या the diagram that I have drawn for you guys, you would see it resembles the shape of a sausage. ठीक है, it has a sausage shape. So although it is not a very visible or a very appreciable difference, but there's a slight difference in the appearance of the shape of mitochondria and chloroplast, which is that mitochondria is sausage shaped and chloroplast is oval or spherical in shape. और जो ये सॉसेज शेप आ भी रहा होता है माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया का, वो आप इस तरह से कह सकते हो कि जो हमारे पास इनर फोल्ड्स हैं, जो हमारे पास क्रिस्टे हैं, उनकी वजह से एक सॉसेज लाइक अपीयरेंस आ रहा होता है. एंड इन फोल्ड्स की वजह से हम क्लियरली डिफरेंशिएट कर सकते हैं बिटवीन अ माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया एंड अ क्लोरोप्लास्ट, बिकॉज क्लोरोप्लास्ट की जो मेम्ब्रेन होती है, इट इज नॉट फोल्डेड, इट्स ऑल्सो स्मूथ एंड राउंड. ओके. Okay, ji. Mitochondrial matrix contains soluble enzymes for respiration. Obviously, we have studied कि हमारे पास mitochondria aerobic respiration कर रहा होता है, तो जो भी enzymes होंगी mitochondria के अंदर, वो उसके matrix में present होंगी, जो कि respiration करा रही होंगी. और हमारे पास in chloroplast, the enzymes would be responsible for what? They would be responsible for photosynthesis, and because the medium, the region inside a chloroplast is called stroma, so those enzymes would be present inside the stroma of the chloroplast. Okay, so these are the structural differences between mitochondria. Now moving on to the functional similarities and the functional differences. कि हमारे पास कौन से reactions are similar in a mitochondria and chloroplast, and which reactions are different between mitochondria and chloroplast. So as we just discussed a while ago, that since both mitochondria and chloroplast have ATP synthase enzyme, both of them would be involved in the synthesis of ATP. So the functional similarity between mitochondria and chloroplast is that they both are responsible for producing ATP using the enzyme ATP synthase. So this is basically their similarity, functional similarity. Why? Because ATP production is a function, it is a process, it's a reaction. Okay, ji. What is the functional difference between mitochondria and chloroplast? So mitochondria produces ATP through aerobic respiration. The process which is taking place inside a mitochondria is what? It's aerobic respiration. So जो ATP बन रहा होता है inside a mitochondria, that is as a result of aerobic respiration. And in chloroplast, we know that ATP is required for the process of photosynthesis. Chloroplast is responsible for photosynthesis, and therefore, chloroplast produces ATP through photosynthesis. And we also discussed that in what step or in what state of photosynthesis ATP is being formed. So, ATP is being formed in the light-dependent reaction, the light-dependent stage. So these are the functional similarity and differences and structural similarity and differences between mitochondria and chloroplast. So any questions so far about this entire chapter that we studied of mitochondria and chloroplast? Chapter D subtopics. Any questions so far? Anything you want me to repeat? Okay, perfect. Now moving on to cellulose cell wall in plants. Now, first and foremost, हमारे पास we understood that in a plant cell we have basically two boundaries. ठीक है? The first boundary or the first barrier or the first layer which is present in a plant cell is what? It is cell wall. And then there's this another layer which is present in all types of cells, which is the cell membrane. Now, cell wall we studied is present in plant cells and it is absent in animal cells, right? So basically, what is cell wall made up of? So cell wall in plant cell is made up of cellulose. And cellulose is what? Cellulose is a polysaccharide. Now we know that poly means multiple, more than one or more than two. So cellulose is not a monomer. It's not a single subunit. It is basically made up of smaller subunits, and those smaller subunits are combining together to form cellulose. ठीक है जी? Now, what exactly are those subunits? So basically, cellulose is made up of cellulose fibers. Cellulose fibers क्या हैं? बहुत सारे, जैसे हमने protein synthesis mein we said that there are a lot of polypeptide chains, and those polypeptide chains come together, join together in the correct orientation to form a protein. So protein is a polysaccharide. Protein is a macromolecule which is made up of smaller subunits, smaller monomers, which are our amino acids. Those amino acids are forming the polypeptide chains, and then the polypeptide chains are forming the protein. Similarly, we have cellulose fibers. And those cellulose fibers join together to form our cellulose cell wall. So basically, each line that I have drawn over here is a single cellulose fiber. So this is a cellulose fiber. This is a cellulose fiber. So all these lines that I have drawn, they are drawn first and foremost, they are drawn in a crisscross manner. I haven't stacked them up on each other, or I haven't placed them adjacent to each other. They're actually forming a trap. They're forming a net. So we say that they're present in a crisscross manner. So you can say that when these cellulose fiber join together, हमारे पास ये एक fiber run कर रहा है, ये एक fiber run कर रहा है. These are the fibers, and then I have fibers over it. So when they align in a crisscross manner, they come together in a crisscross manner, there is some porous region left over here. एक porous region है. And what do I mean by porous region? These are pores. There is nothing present in this region. This is like hollow spaces. And through these hollow spaces, through these pores, substances can pass through. And that is why we say that cellulose cell wall or plant cell wall is permeable. Permeable का क्या मतलब है? That it is allowing substances to pass. And why is it happening? Because there are small holes, there are small gaps, there are small pores between these cellulose fibers, between the cellulose fiber network. And these pores are because open, And since they're open, they're not stopping anything from coming inside them. And hence, we're saying that cellulose cell wall is permeable. It is allowing substances to pass through it. Okay? So now do you guys understand and appreciate the reason why a cell wall is completely permeable, unlike a cell membrane? Okay. Moving forward, now let's read through this. Cell wall is the outermost covering of a plant cell. We have discussed that quite a few times. And then it is made up of a polysaccharide cellulose. And I told you that cellulose is basically a polysaccharide. It's a molecule made up of smaller molecules, and those smaller molecules are basically cellulose fibers. And those cellulose fibers basically join in a crisscross alternating network, in a crisscross pattern. And the way they join together, there are some holes, some gaps remaining, and those pores basically allow substances to enter through the cell wall, and therefore we call cell wall a permeable boundary. Okay, Ji. So what is the function of a cell wall? What is a purpose that cell wall is serving? So सबसे अहम चीज जो हमारे पास cell wall की है, which is very important, that is that cell wall provides mechanical strength to the plant cell, hence preventing cell lysis. Lysis, we know, we have discussed it quite a few times, that lysis means breakdown. Anything when it's split is breakdown, that is known as lysis. किसी भी चीज का टूट जाना, that is basically lysis. So basically, animal cells, they do not have an outer boundary. They do not have any cell wall protecting them. So they can easily undergo lysis if a lot of content, if a lot of water or if a lot of fluid enters into an animal cell, it would swell and it would eventually burst. It would split open. It would undergo lysis. On the contrary, a cell wall protects the plant cell from undergoing that lysis. Even when the content of the plant cell increases in size, there is an increase and there is an increment in the volume of the cell, in the content of the cell. The plant cell would swell, but because there is cell wall present, there is the cellulose fibers present, this network of cellulose fibers present, they provide a tensile strength, a mechanical strength. Hence, their mechanical strength is protecting the plant cell from undergoing cell lysis or breakdown. And why is it so? It is because these cellulose fiber are highly tensile. And what do I mean by they are highly tensile? They can bear a lot of pressure. ठीक है जी? They can bear a lot of pressure. इसकी मिसाल ऐसे है that for example, I take a thread, ठीक है, normal हमारे पास जो सुई धागे का thread होता है, I take that thread and I apply a force and I break it. It would easily break. On the contrary, if I take a PVC pipe, if I take that PVC pipe, or if I take a plastic pipe, if I try to break that open, it would not, if I'm applying the same force that I'm applying on the thread, it would not break. It would bend. It would, change its shape. थोड़ा flexible होता है तो उसकी change shape हो जाती है, bend हो सकता है, but it does not break. On the contrary, if I take a thread and I split, if I break it, it would easily break with my hand force. But on the contrary, a thick PVC pipe, it would not break easily with the same force that I'm applying onto the thread. So basically, that is the analogy through which you could understand why cellulose is providing a mechanical support to the plant cell. That is because the cellulose fiber can bear a lot of pressure. So any hydrostatic pressure that the cytoplasm of the plant cell is exerting on the cell wall, it can bear that. And it can bear that, and since it can bear that, it would not split open, it would not break down. So that is why, because cellulose fibers, what are making up a plant cell wall, are so tensile, they're providing a mechanical strength to the cell, the plant cell, and therefore they're preventing it from breaking down. Subsequently, cell wall protects the protoplasm from invading microorganisms. Although we know that the plant cell wall is permeable, the pores are allowing substances to enter the cell, but those pores are very small. They're very small gaps, they're very small in nature. So that's why big bacteria or viruses, They don't easily enter into the plant cell through the cell wall pores because they are relatively very small. ठीक है जी. So cell wall protects the protoplasm from invading microorganisms. Why? Because the pores in the cell wall are not too large to allow bacteria or virus to enter. Then third, it maintains the shape of a plant cell by providing a structural framework and thus giving a definite shape to the cell, provides mechanical support to the cell. So this again is linking us back to the idea of high tensile strength of cellulose fiber. Why? Because it's like that. आपका जो framework होता है, whenever a building is being made, we say that if the foundation, if the structure, if the base of that building is strong enough, then that building can easily stand onto it. But if the structure or the foundation or the framework of that building is not strong enough, that building is unable to stand. So basically, cell wall is the first boundary, it is the first framework of the cell, and because it is made up of highly tensile cellulose fibers, it is providing the right definite shape to the cell, it is providing the right framework to the cell. So the plant cell has a regular, has a definite, has a well-defined shape. On the contrary, an animal cell, because it does not have a cell wall, it does not have that regular shape. Why? Because it does not have that mechanical support, that mechanical tensile framework, which the cellulose plant cell is providing to a plant cell. Moving forward, the cellulose cell wall we know is a permeable, and in the root hair cells specifically, जो हमारे पास root hair cells होते हैं, which are responsible for the absorption of mineral ions from soil and water from soil. These particles, the mineral particles and the water particles, they can be easily diffused, easily absorbed through these small pores in the cell wall. So it is basically facilitating in that diffusion, in that uptake of water and mineral salts in the root hair cells. So I'll just read it through. It is a permeable membrane for diffusion and helps in the absorption of minerals and solutes along with water in the cells of root hairs. And cell wall can also serve as a reservoir for food. Okay, so that's about our cell wall. Any questions about it?